Hello friends. Today I present you a comparison of the Latina Nova with the planned language Esperanto. This can only be done roughly. Esperanto is also an extensive language like other modern languages, but with regular grammatical occurrences. That is a step forward if you compare this planned language with languages that have evolved over time, including English. Latina Nova is a newly created language that was not formed arbitrarily. It is based on existing grammatical structures and the Latin vocabulary. Millions of people have spoken Latin and formulated their thoughts in this language. Most important extensions of these ancient languages took place in modern European times. This new Latin is much larger in scope than the classical Latin of the ancient writers of the Roman Empire. It is of great importance for the scientific knowledge of the world. Without the new Latin, the modern There have been many projects to create a planned language for different purposes. Only the auxiliary world languages are of interest in this video. Language projects with a fictional character or based on individualistic motives are not discussed here. The most important planned language of today is Esperanto, the product of a Jewish ophthalmologist from the former Russian Empire, now Poland. The national borders have changed, his language has remained. His name was Lazair Zamenhof and he was a linguist. In addition to his native Yiddish, he also spoke the languages of his homeland, Polish, Russian, German, as well as English, French, the ancient languages Latin and Greek, and he knew the biblical Hebrew. In 1887 he published a grammar of his planned language, which was named Esperanto after his pseudonym. Zamenhof was deeply rooted in Judaism. He was looking for his way to unite Judaism through a universal language and, at a young age, joined Zionism, a national Jewish movement based on the religious nationalist statements of the Jewish Bible. His new religious doctrine, the so-called doctrine of humanity, however, met with no approval in the Jews. It seemed too Christian after all. Despite this defeat, he stuck to his goal of a planned language. His breakthrough came when he gave up his Zionist ideas and also addressed the non-Jews. Zamenhof's origins from Eastern Europe and his Yiddish mother tongue, which comes from medieval German, shaped the sound and vocabulary of his planned language. In addition, remnants of his original language project with very arbitrary and schematic appearances have been preserved. The linguistic schematism, which was also present in the previously widespread planned language Volapük, is a constitutive part of its language, which I will present to you later. Anyone who has studied Volapük will notice how difficult it is to understand or to memorize purely arbitrary linguistic schemes. Latina Nova is a new language project based on classical Latin. Its grammar contains endings and words familiar to every Latin learner. However, its grammar is very simplified and clear. In terms of vocabulary, it is often based on the Neo-Latin of modern times. Elements of today's Romance languages are also integrated. It was developed by a German who has been concerned with the idea of a planned language from a young age. His language is a revolutionary language and an ideal linguistic tool for the upheaval of civil society. The creator of the Latina Nova grew up among the little people and learned that modern natural languages are a great hurdle for acquiring education and knowledge. Those who grow up in the lower class find it extremely difficult to understand the many unknown terms of a modern society. Mastering these terms is very important. The German language is a distinct class language that cements unnecessary social class relationships. With the Latina Nova, class boundaries can be broken, which can lead to a new society. This new society will replace civil society. There are languages without written tradition. Latina Nova as the successor language to Latin is represented with the familiar Latin letters. These letters have a fixed pronunciation that does not change. So this is different from English with its varying pronunciation of the respective letters. Some Latina Nova sounds have to be expressed using a combination of letters. There are strange letters in Esperanto that look alien to Western Europeans. They have diacritical marks. These are a kind of hats on certain consonants. Zamenhof had an international language in mind, which also includes letters that differ from the usual Western European script. It is legitimate. Latina Nova, on the other hand, is based on Latin and therefore only contains real Latin letters and their combinations. Latina Nova is easy to type with a regular keyboard. Now I'll show you what parts of speech there are in Latina Nova and Esperanto. They often agree. This is no coincidence, but is based on the same linguistic source from which the endings of the individual parts of speech were taken. The sound of a language is decisively influenced by the choice of certain endings. Latina Nova sounds more Spanish than Esperanto. The endings for the plural, the adverbs, the infinitive differ from each other. There is a tonal difference whether the plural is oi, as in Esperanto, or e, as in Latina Nova. The endings are used again and again in sentences and form the sound of a language. The declension of nouns is very similar in both languages. Latina Nova is similar to Spanish. However, it has certain endings for the accusative. This case also exists in Esperanto. However, the plural ending doesn't sound particularly nice, especially the accusative oin. It has an equivalent in the adjectives and is ain there. The function of pronouns is to represent nouns. Personal pronouns and possessive pronouns actually have a lot in common, but in natural languages the same persons are often identified with different phonemes. In English you cannot immediately see that the first person I and my have something to do with each other. This is more progressive in Esperanto and Latina Nova. Here, for example, the consonant M indicates the first person. However, Esperanto has clear weaknesses here, not only in the distinction between singular and plural, but also in phonetic distinction. This does not rule out hearing defects. Both planned languages also differ in the possessive pronouns. In Latina Nova, the singular a is clearly differentiated from the plural ia. Esperanto is less differentiated. While there is a good distinction in the number of nouns in this language, the inventor of Esperanto worked less cleanly here. Actions, processes and conditions are constantly expressed in languages. When stammering, sentences are often shortened. Usually everyone will use at least one verb with a certain time level. Otherwise he could not fully communicate. If you look at Esperanto, the vowel schematism catches the eye. The individual times are expressed by different vowels. The Latina Nova goes back to classical Latin. Numerous suffixes also remind of this. There is a crucial difference in the personal endings of the Latina Nova, which are structured analytically in Esperanto as in English. The compound times are expressed quite differently in both languages. Esperanto remains the same in its schematism. Latina Nova goes other ways, some structurally similar to English. A form of the auxiliary verb to have is also used here. The passive voice is used when one does not know the author of an action. In natural languages it also has other functions, which in the Latina Nova are represented with appropriate linguistic means. This language knows very differentiated and unambiguous instruments to formulate information precisely. In this regard, a planned language is superior to a language that has evolved naturally and has been reshaped over and over again, and thus often appears inconsistent and arbitrary. Esperanto stews in its own juice and makes use of the auxiliary verb to be, another indication of its schematism. Comparisons are always important. Both languages go their separate ways. Esperanto follows the scheme more and most. Its counterpart sees itself as a successor to Classical Latin and uses a similar structure. People could already count in the Stone Age. A modern society would be unthinkable without numbers. Both planned languages use the existing numerals. In Esperanto, it is not clear why the numerals are not treated as adjectives. The further the linguistic comparison of the two planned languages progresses, the more it becomes clear that they are not twins. They differ visibly for the different sorts of numbers. Latina Nova is more based on natural models. You can't decide whether it's better or worse. Languages have always emerged arbitrarily. After a sufficiently long period of separation, completely different languages develop from a common original language. It is a natural process. Homo sapiens is very creative. A contentious issue in today's civil society is genderism. This is a modern theory, according to which certain linguistic phenomena would discriminate against women. Therefore, everything is tried by the genderists and their representatives in the bourgeois state to modify the language and to intervene in the morphology as well as the vocabulary. In fact, this does not change the bourgeois social structures with their oppression of the common people, regardless of their natural gender. Symbols are changed, but no real changes are initiated. Esperanto would therefore be rated sexist because of its formation of the female sex, which is linguistically nonsense. The real oppression does not come from the language, but from the ruling class. Genderists who find themselves within the foggy thought structures of bourgeois society are not aware of this. In Latina Nova, the male and female gender are strictly separated. There is no grammatical gender. However, even Latina Nova would not be able to change an existing society with this linguistic structure. This requires completely different measures that are not in the linguistic area. What follows are basically boring lists of prefixes and suffixes. They should serve as a comparison between the two planned languages. The aim of Latina Nova is also retained here. Existing parts of the word should be taken up. This leads to a recognition experience and makes it easier to use these parts of the word. There are matches with Esperanto. Lazar Zamenhof, the inventor of Esperanto, dealt with an a priori planned language in his youth. He was also familiar with Pastor Schleier's Volapük, a planned language known at the time that had considerable shortcomings. As a result, it quickly lost followers due to the newly created, better Esperanto. A priori planned languages are very artificial and correspond more to the tastes of their inventors. But many people don't want to speak them. Esperanto also has a certain artificiality. This can be seen very clearly in the so-called tabular words, which consist of pronouns and adverbs. This is a conglomerate of strictly schematically formed words that sound very similar and do not have an aesthetic effect. But that's a matter of taste. In the Latina Nova there is also a certain educational scheme, which, however, is more based on natural models.
Hello friends. My name is Keisha. Now you have got an insight into the two planned languages Latina Nova and Esperanto. I hope you had fun and your curiosity is aroused. I find Latina Nova more modern and more sophisticated than Esperanto. This language has future potential. Our time is exciting. Stay tuned.